All right, today we go on to our next civilization, and that is the Persian Empire. Now we know from the prophecy concerning the statue that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed about that the Medo-Persian Empire was the next empire to come after Babylon, and it is symbolized in the arms and chest of the statue. And it was made of what?
Silver.
Silver. Also symbolized by one animal in the dream.
Also the bear.
Right. Now the Medes, as we see symbolized in the bear, were the weaker part of the Medo-Persian Empire. In fact, the Medes were a smaller tribe than the Persians. The Persians defeated them, but then the Medes gladly became a part of the empire, and they contributed a number of things. First of all, they contributed their Aryan language with an alphabet of 36 characters. Now, you can see here that the characters they use look a lot like the cuneiform that we saw earlier. Here are the letters that are represented by each of these characters. And in addition to that, the Medes contributed the idea of using pen and parchment instead of clay and stylus. They also promoted the extensive use of the column in architecture. They promoted the Zoroastrian religion, which was a religion that taught that there were two gods in the universe fighting against one another, an evil god and a good god. They also promoted polygamous marriages, being married to more than one wife, and a body of law that found its influence in the expression, the law of the Medes and Persians. Well, there are a number of words that we get from the Persian language, and here's a chart showing the progression from ancient Persian all the way up into finally Dutch, German, and then English. And then I think this is modern. Well, that looks like Polish. So words like father, mother, brother, daughter, those all come from the Persian language. The word name, man, the verbs give and stand, the word me, the numbers 5 and 7, the word and the word right. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. It's right. And then.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to make a joke.
Oh, yeah.
So all those are Persian words that we use in our language today. Well, in 559, a handsome man by the name of Cyrus, who later is called Cyrus the Great, founded the mighty Persian Empire. In 546, he defeated a guy by the name of King Croesus of Lydia. Now, Croesus is the first recorded king to mint metal coins, to make coins out of metal. They were called staters, and they had Croesus's own image on them. And they were used in part to finance his wars of expansion. Now, Croesus was rescued by Cyrus when he conquered his area from the funeral pyre. Apparently, Croesus was going to be burned alive, and Cyrus stepped in and stopped it. But Croesus left a legacy, nonetheless, concerning economics and money. Not only is he the first king to mint metal coins, but he realized that if he debased his coins, he could create more currency and thereby increase financing. Now, does anybody know what I mean by debasing coins? Joel?
You take the value out of it by, I don't know.
Yeah, several ways you can do it. You take the value out, or you decrease the value. One way to do it, if you have coins made out of metal, is simply to shave off around the edge. And if you do that with a bunch of coins, pretty soon you have enough to make another coin, and supposedly no one will be the wiser that their coin they're getting is actually smaller. And so by doing things like that, he could have more money. to spend on his wars.
Isn't that kind of like what dollar bills are?
Explain.
They're just paper. They're not really worth anything.
Yeah, they're just paper. Now, when dollar bills were first printed in our country, they were printed to stand for real money. The value was in the fact that there was gold or silver to back up that dollar. In fact, when I was just a little bit younger than you, the bills we had were called silver certificates. And it was printed right on there that the bearer of this note can turn it into any bank and get silver for it. And I remember doing that as a kid, taking, I don't know, a $5 bill or $20 bill, take it to the bank. Okay, I'd like silver, and they would give you silver coins. Now, back then, the coins were actually made out of silver, and they're not anymore. They may have some silver in it, but they have debased our coins today by mixing other metals in the silver and doing something what I call sandwiching. Have you ever looked at a quarter from the side? What do you see?
It's lines crossed. One's like silver, one's like copper.
Yeah, there's in the middle, it's a different color. That's copper. Now, how's the value of copper compared to silver? So by putting copper in there instead of silver, they debased the coin, made it actually worth less in its intrinsic value, but still said this is worth 25 cents. So that's the kind of thing that Croesus figured out how to do, and by doing that, got more money for himself in order to finance his ventures. Now, we have some lessons to learn from him, so I want to spend a few minutes looking at 2 rules of money creation from Croesus. First, the entities charged with coining of money, that is, whoever's in charge of coining money, including Lydian rulers, medieval goldsmiths that we'll come across later, and even modern central bankers, have an inherent tendency to inflate its production. In other words, it's the normal thing. If you're in charge of the money, you're going to try to make more of it so you can have more. Not increase the value, but increase the amount. And that's different. They will always do so unless limited by institutional factors such as the existence of competing currencies or the establishment of a strong metallic standard. And that strong metallic standard was, in the United States, gold. I don't know if you ever heard of Fort Knox. We always were told that the gold that backed up our money was stored in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And like I said, you could go and get silver for your bills anytime. But that stopped. And the person who, now there were other times in our past where we went off the gold standard, but the person who did it for good was President Nixon. President Nixon ran as a conservative, but he ruled as a liberal. He did a lot of things that were counterproductive to really good planning and letting people have liberty in how they do things and having money work itself out in the economy naturally. Now, there was a time when each bank could produce its own money, its own paper money. And so if you got a bill from a bank, let's say it was from the Bank of Omaha, all right? The Bank of Omaha put on their bill, this is a note worth $5 from the Bank of Omaha, payable to the bearer, Bank of Omaha. So you could use that as money if people trusted the Bank of Omaha. Now, what if you heard that the Bank of Omaha was printing more bills than what they actually had gold to back it up? Would you accept a bill from somebody that said Bank of Omaha on it? No. You'd use a bill from some other bank that you trusted. Well, when the government's in charge and no one else is allowed to print money, you don't have a choice, do you? And the government can print more and more money or do whatever they want with the money, and we really don't have a choice. And so we're no longer on a gold standard. The bills that you have are, that dollar bill is worth a dollar bill. Why? Because there's a dollar's worth of gold backing it up? No. Because there's a dollar's worth of silver backing it up? No. It's a dollar bill that's worth a dollar because the government says it's worth a dollar. That's it. And as long as you have trust in your government, then you'll use those bills. And as long as everybody's accepting them, then they're used. Right? But the government does the same thing today as Croesus did back then, the debasing of money. Now, one way to debase it is just what we talked about, and that is to decrease the amount of silver in a coin. Now, in Croesus' time, they could shave off the silver on the side, but and anybody could do that. So that's why on most of our coins, if you look at the side, there are ridges. So if anybody tried to shave it off, you'd see right away the ridges aren't there, and that's not a full quarter or a dime or whatever. But there are other ways to debase, especially when you have paper money. How does the government debase paper money? How do they make the paper dollars of less value? What do?
They print too many.
They print more of it. You see, if you have more of something, that makes each one of those worth less than it was before. You follow? And what's that? And then what does that lead to?
Inflation.
Inflation. Good. What's inflation?
The prices.
Prices go up. Why do prices go up? Just because there's more money out there.
It's less value.
Because it's less value. And so if I'm buying something that's worth $10 and all of a sudden they're printing more money, so my $10, it says a $10 bill, but it's not buying $10 worth of stuff anymore because of inflation. It's only buying $9. So if I'm buying something from Joel and I've got a $10 bill and he knows that what he sold yesterday for $10 is no longer the same value as a $10 bill, he's going to raise his price to get the same value that he would have before. Does that make sense? You follow that? That's a basic principle of economics that most people in our government and most people in our colleges and universities don't seem to get. If you print more money, it's going to make it worth less, which causes inflation. Now, what they think of the solution is to put freezes on prices. They just did that this week in Berlin. They decided rental prices of apartments and stuff was going up too much, so they put a freeze. So you're not allowed to increase the price of rent. All right, so what happens?
The people who are renting out lose money.
The people who are renting are not going to, they're going to lose money because they can't keep up with the increasing prices and other things. And is anybody going to build a new apartment house if the rent prices are frozen? No. So what's going to happen to the availability of places for people to live? It's going to diminish because some places are going to wear out. Okay, that apartment building needs fixed up. Is the guy going to fix it up if he can't increase the rental prices? No. So you see how people think short term. Oh, it's so bad that people's rent prices are going up. Let's fix it. Let's make it so the prices don't go up anymore. But it has a lot of ramifications, doesn't it? Does it actually benefit the people in the long run? No, because they may not have any place to live at all. You know, a lot of things go into these decisions, and it's best just to leave it alone. And that's what happens when the government, anybody that's in control of money, starts messing around with it. So, and that's what they have a tendency to do. But then, secondly, when money creation is a state function, its abuse will benefit the expansion of the central state. In other words, when the government's in charge of money creation, when they go over the line, when they produce too much, whatever they do, it's not going to benefit the people. It only benefits the government. Now, let me explain one way in which it benefits the government. See if you can follow this. Let's say the government, our government's in debt. You know, I hope you know that. 20-some trillion dollars in debt. Let's say that last year it was $20 trillion that our government owed. Got a question so far?
Can't they like make more money?
Well, that's what, so that's what they do. They say they print more money to pay off the debt, right? Now, when they print more money, what happens to the value of that money? It goes down. So when the government is repaying the $20 trillion they owed last year with money that the value has gone down, when they're paying the $20 trillion, are those that they're paying actually getting $20 trillion of value? No, they're getting less than that because the value's gone down. Who does that benefit? The government, because they're actually paying less than what they borrowed. Do you follow that? That's not too difficult, I don't think. Even if you didn't follow it, believe me, that's not all that difficult. But government officials don't seem to get this. And people in our colleges and universities who teach economics don't seem to get this. It's a very simple procedure, very simple principle. Well, all right, so Croesus is the one that starts all this. And people have used it again and again over the years. Abuse will benefit the expansion of the central state. In other words, the central government, the government that's producing all the money, is going to expand at the expense of the people. And the expansion will benefit those people that are in government and those that are friends of people in government. That's who's going to have the benefit of it. And the citizens, maybe who aren't willing to pay for a war, they can be bypassed because now the government has more money that it's created in order to fight wars. That's what Croesus was doing. But as you have pointed out already, as you see, when you debase money, and either by taking away some of the silver or by increasing the production of paper money, it always causes inflation, which leads to a more greatly decreased ability for economic advancement the further away from the upper class one goes. So when you have inflation, people have to pay more, and so they have less money, because it always takes a while for wages to catch up with prices. You understand that? You know, if you have a certain wage and prices go up, your boss doesn't automatically say, oh, prices went up today, I'll increase your wage. It doesn't work like that. And so as prices go up and wages don't, or they follow slowly behind, it puts people more and more in a bind. And so inflation eventually leads to economic depression possibly, or at least a downturn in the economy where things aren't going well. And so one of the things you have happen, like we've had happen in the last couple of years, as government regulations have been backed off, as we're not producing more money, that is printing more money, and we haven't had inflation. Therefore, what happens? There's more money into the economy, people are buying things, jobs are increasing, and so now we have the lowest unemployment rate in decades, and the lowest unemployment rate for black people ever, and the lowest unemployment rate for Hispanic people ever. And I see signs all over the place, people advertising for jobs. Why is that? It's because the government has not been interfering with the economy, has not been printing more money and things like that. All right, so that's your economics lesson from King Croesus. You didn't know you were going to get economics in world history, did you? Well, that is extra information free of charge. I'm not going to charge any more for that, even though it's economics. Okay. Cyrus the Great is considered the founder of the Persian Empire. And at the same time, I want to tell you something else that's going on. At the same time that this is happening, that Cyrus is beginning to conquer the known world there, is when the third wonder of the ancient world, the temple of Artemis or Diana at Ephesus, was built. It was at this time, in 552 BC. Also, around the same time, in 544 BC, the first public library in the world was established in the city of Athens. Good job. Very good, Jake. All right. Now, Persia, if they're expanding, they've got to conquer Babylon. Babylon is the going civilization at the time, right? So let's find out what happened. At the end of 539 BC, Cyrus attacked the city of Opis on the Tigris River near Babylon. So he's getting close to Babylon. October the 10th, led by Gobryas, the Persians occupied the city of Sippar. I don't know if you remember that one or not, but that was one of the cities where Jewish people were settled. Sippar, S-I-P-P-A-R, or Cypher, I'm not sure the pronunciation, S-I-P-P-A-R. Maybe it's Sippar. 2 days later, October 12th, the Persians are outside the walls of Babylon. And so what happens? Belshazzar throws his feast to show the Persian forces outside the city that he was not afraid of them. And remember, he called for the utensils of the temple in Jerusalem to be used. And as they were partying, what did they see? A huge hand appeared and started writing on the wall in a strange script. This struck fear into the hearts of everyone, as the Persians could not read that writing. And it was suggested, as you remember, that Daniel, the chief of the Magi, be called to interpret this writing. Daniel told Belshazzar that the message from Yahweh was that he had been weighed and found wanting. You didn't measure up. And so the kingdom would be taken from him that very night. Well, how did it happen? I told you a couple days ago that I would tell you what occurred for him to lose the kingdom. One of the things that enabled the Babylonians to be so confident, and Belshazzar to be so confident that their city couldn't be overtaken, in addition to the big walls all around it, was the river Euphrates, because it ran right through the city, giving them an unending supply of water. So they could thumb their noses and say, you can stay out there and lay siege all you want. We've got water in here. So what did the Persians do? You know?
Don't they go in the water and go under the walls?
No, first they dig a canal and divert the water of the Euphrates River. And so at the right time, they've got it dammed up and they get the water diverted the other way so that the water flowing under the river dries up, under the city walls dries up, and the Persians are able to enter the city under the walls, just walking through the riverbed of the Euphrates River. And they're able to enter the city without a fight. And they capture Belshazzar and execute him that very night. Pretty ingenious, don't you think? They went under the wall. Later, they also captured his father, Nabonidus, and I'm not sure if they executed him or not, but they did capture him. Now, what's interesting is, a couple weeks later, October 29th, Cyrus entered the city of Babylon, but they greeted him as a deliverer, not treated him as a conqueror. It's like they were glad that Cyrus had defeated their king. And that may relate to the fact that Nabonidus and Belshazzar were Assyrian, not Babylonian. I'm not sure exactly, but they threw green twigs out in the pathway. Kind of reminds me what people did for Jesus on the way to Jerusalem, right? The palm branches. And so he was greeted well, and Cyrus, and maybe it's because they heard about Cyrus. Cyrus was a benevolent ruler. He was good. He was a good guy. He treated people well. And so it was almost an honor and a privilege to be conquered by Cyrus, because he's probably going to treat us better than our own kings might. Well, Cyrus, as predicted by Daniel, by God through Daniel, issued an edict permitting the Jewish people to return to Jerusalem. This is called the Cyrus Cylinder, and this is all writing on here that talks about what he did. Remember, God predicted that a man named Cyrus would permit the Jews to go back to Jerusalem, and that's exactly what happened. Cyrus Cylinder, yeah. Here's another, a smaller picture of it that tells a little bit about it. It's a clay cylinder, and so when Cyrus conquered Babylon, on this he talks about freedom of worship for all, and a call for repatriation of deportees. In other words, it wasn't just the Jews he allowed to go back. He said all people should go back to their own countries. And if you want to see this, you have to go to the London Museum, where almost all ancient artifacts seem to be located. Over and over again, you see that. Now here it is in English. This is amazing. Here's the first Declaration of Human Rights by Cyrus the Great. Here it tells about who he is. And let's look at the items here. First, I declare that I will respect the tradition, customs, and religion of the nations of my empire, and never let any of my governors to look down or insult the inhabitants of my nations. That's pretty unusual, isn't it? Not only in the ancient world, but in any world. That I treat everybody fairly. Everybody, you in your own traditions, that's fine. Next, I hereby abolish slavery. Can you imagine that? In the ancient world, he abolished slavery. My governors are ordered to prohibit exchanging men and women as slaves within their ruling domains. Such a tradition should be exterminated the world over. This guy is really beyond his time. If anyone oppresses others, should it happen, I will take his or her right back and penalize the oppressors. Today I declare freedom of religion. All are free to choose any religion, live in all regions, and take up any job provided that they never violate others' rights. That's amazing. Every place in the world could do no better than to adopt these rules. Now, one of the things that confuse a lot of people when they're reading in the book of Daniel, which covers the Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire, is a king by the name of Darius. You have Cyrus the Great coming in and being the emperor over Babylon. But then we find Daniel having interaction with this guy named Darius, and he is called Darius the Mede. Now, later on, there is going to be an emperor named Darius. Don't confuse the two. It's like Herod. There's more than one of them. This is Darius the Mede, and he is the one that is in charge of Babylon under the authority of Cyrus. So he's a king, but he's under Cyrus. And he's the king of Babylon that Daniel has the problem in the lion's den. Yes?
Would you be considered a Tetrarch?
Yeah, you could call him that, probably. Yeah, that'd be a good name for it. I think in Daniel, I think he's called King Darius. But in the Roman system, he certainly would have been called Tetrarch.
Is this the Darius that we read about in Haggai?
No. That's the later emperor. Okay? Pretty sure. So this is the one that threw Daniel in the lion's den. Remember, he didn't want to do it, but he was bound by the law of the Medes and the Persians. So he couldn't violate that. So he threw him in, and he got up the next morning and came in, and Daniel, did your God save you? You know, he's hoping that Daniel was still alive, and so he's so glad to see Daniel. So that he issued this decree. He says, everywhere in my kingdom, men should tremble in fear before the God Daniel trusts in. Daniel's God is a living God. He is steadfast forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed. He delivers and he rescues. He works signs and wonders. He has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. He is the true and living God. This guy became a believer in Yahweh because of what he saw happen with Daniel. Now, Daniel also received a prophecy concerning the future of Persia and the other kingdoms that would come after. In Daniel 11, he is given a prophecy over the next 400 years. And we're going to wait and look at that when we get closer to the time that it actually occurred. So we'll come back and consider what other prophecies Daniel received tomorrow.